I'm going to go straight into this. I think, certainly in my own constituency, I've had more cases around PIP than I have around anything over recent months about the delays in PIP, and it's been absolutely amazing that in the last couple of weeks, miraculously, people who've been waiting 6-7 months for an assessment have suddenly been given a date, and I wonder if there's a connection to our hearing today. But I'm very pleased for them that they have finally got a date. This isn't another bit of bureaucracy, Mr. Devereux. This is really about people's lives, and it's about the most vulnerable who really depend on this, either to live independently or to be able to work. So I want to start with Atos. I've seen the tender document that you submitted, particularly for Lot 3, which is London, the south of England. And what you, in that tender document, you committed, you said that you would deliver the PIP service through an extensive estates network with 56 NHS, 25 private hospitals and 653 physiotherapy practices. You said that, didn't you?
We did say that we said that we'd have access to those.
Pardon?
We said we'd have access to those sites, yes.
You said more than you'd have access. You committed. You said, I mean, I can read, do you want me to read you from the actual thing? You said, our supply, which, you said these can be, let me just take probably, let me go to the one that is the, probably, I mean, the document, I'm afraid, is absolutely chock-a-block full of your commitment. We can deliver the PIP service through an extensive estates network comprising 56 NHS, 25 private hospitals, 653 physiotherapy practices. You then went on to name a whole lot of NHS trusts who had agreed to, where you said we have agreements in place whereby the contract, well, we have agreements in place. You talk about agreements actually in place. And you named NHS trusts. Now, did you have agreements in place with them? Did you have agreements in place with them?
So at the point of the tender document, I think we've been very open.
I think you're going to have to speak up.
Oh, sorry. At the point of when we did the tender document, I think we've been very clear that what we actually were doing at the point was talking about bidding for all 4 lots.
Pardon?
At the point of doing the tender document, we were actually bidding for all 4 lots. As you know, we ended up winning Lot 1 and Lot 3.
I'm just interested, I'm looking at Lot 3,
yeah,
which happens to impact on quite a number of people sitting around this table, where you specifically stated that you had these sites, you had agreements in place. I'm taking first the NHS hospitals. Did you have, I'm asking you a very simple question, did you have agreements in place with the NHS hospitals that you said you did?
So at the point of time of writing that tender document, we couldn't have agreements in place with them because we hadn't signed a contract with the department.
Document 4, Part 5, page 72 to 73 of your tender document says, we have agreements in place whereby contractual commitments of a failing partner can be picked up by another. Are you saying that that tender document was incorrect?
No, absolutely not. I know there's been accusations that we lied in the tender document. We didn't lie in the tender document. What we set out in that tender document was what we were talking to the trusts about at the time.
I think you're going to have to speak up.
Hang on, can I just be clear?
Sorry.
The reason I interrupted the Chair just then was because your last sentence was to say we couldn't at that point have agreements in place. My point is that your tender document said we have agreements in place. You just said a moment ago, we couldn't have had agreements in place. I'm just trying to figure out which of the two is true. The sentence you uttered just now, or the sentence in your tender document, because they can't both be true, can they?
So what we had...
They can't both be true, can they?
No, absolutely. The way you've described it, they can't both be true. What we did have in place with those trusts and with those suppliers that we were talking to at that point in time was an agreement to say that we were working with them. Other than, we did make a mistake. We drafted that tender document within a 3-week period. It was a very short procurement. We did have agreements with them to say that we could name them in the tender document, and once we knew what the scope of our contract would be, we would then put those contracts in place. We were very open with the department about exactly
Can
where
I just
we were.
quote to you out of your own tender document, page 9, each partner has contractually agreed, that's what you said, in the tender document to providing accommodation to the required specification. Was that true or was that not true? Just say yes or no. You said in the document each partner has contractually agreed to providing accommodation to the required specification.
So what we'd been able to do at that point...
Was it true or not true?
It was true that we'd agreed with them the specification.
No, contractually agreed to providing accommodation.
At that point in time, yeah, and our suppliers are providing accommodation to us.
Pardon?
That our suppliers are providing accommodation
that there would be 740 assessment sites across London and the South East of England, and in fact there were 96.
We've got 96 now. What we talked about at that point was we would have access to 750.
No, you contractually...
took on...
Well, let me take you through them. Gloucester Hospital NHS Trust, one of the people that you said you had a contractual agreement. You said in your document, this is in your tender document, you said you had a contractual agreement. Gloucester Hospital Trust says we included, there was no contractual agreement. Is that true? Are they lying or are you lying?
No, absolutely. No, they're right. At that point, we didn't have a contractual agreement.
Well, then why did you put in your...
What we talked to them about was agreeing the contractual terms. Should we win those lots, we would contract with them on. We were very open with the department about exactly where we were with all of our suppliers.
To be honest, Ms. Coleman, it wasn't what you should not have put into your tender document that you actually had a contractual agreement. Did you write to the trust? Is it true that you wrote to the trust and apologised for naming them?
We wrote to one of them. We incorrectly named, and we wrote to them and apologised.
Well,
we'd actually contacted all of the trusts that we named and got their agreement. Unfortunately, we did name Cambridge.
To be honest, that is, that's just not true. I have to tell you that is not true. I mean, I've seen things hinging. Let me take them through. Gloucester Hospital, I've done. Gloucester, I've done. North Essex Partnership Trust said the trust did not give explicit permission to be named in the tender document. Did you name them? Yes, you did. Mid Essex Health Trust provided emails that showed their negotiations ended before the tender was submitted to DWP. You named them. Ipswich said the trust did not enter into any agreement in principle to deliver PIP assessments. Any agreement to do. Now, that is trusts telling, stating publicly in the answer to FOIs, that's how all this information came out, that you did not have agreement, yet you named them in this document. And I could go on. Norfolk, should we do Oxford University Hospital Trust, didn't agree. They said no. Norfolk and yours, Richard, didn't agree. Norfolk and Norwich didn't agree. In fact, only 4 out of all those you named agreed. So you misled people. You misled in the contract document. You misled the state. You misled DWP as to where you were on getting contractual agreements to be able to run the contract. You misled people, didn't you, Ms. Coleman?
No, I disagree. What I'm happy to do outside of here is share with you the
documentation. No, I want to share it in here in public because I think one of our great concerns as a committee is always this issue about how we sign up to these contracts and how we then and how the public then gets duped and doesn't get value for money. Do you want me to quote to you all the times within this tender document where you said agreed?
I'm more,
okay, I'll go through it, just because I'm not having this nonsense being taught. The estate required for all 4 lots has already been identified and in virtually all cases ready to use now. You said that, didn't you?
Yes.
Was that true?
Yes.
No, it wasn't. How could it have been true?
Where we contracted with their providers, they were either in the process of putting that accommodation in place or that accommodation was already available. That was one of the things that we wanted to do, was look about how can we deliver this service in a different way and add value by using existing NHS accommodation that wasn't delivering value to those trusts. So that's one of the advantages of what we've actually put in place.
But you hadn't got agreements. You were claiming in your tender documents that you were ready to go with however many 700 odd locations, which would have been close to people, where people had to go. You hadn't got those agreements. You hadn't.
So at the point of the tender document, we couldn't sign agreements because we didn't have a contract.
Pardon?
So we could not sign a contractual agreement.
Well, then you shouldn't have committed. You shouldn't have said that these were ready to go, that you had contractual agreements. You used the term in the tender document that you had a contractual agreement with trusts, who have since said they were you've only managed to work with a quarter of the trusts you named in the document. A quarter. You know, if it had been one or two falling out, I think I could have accepted your argument. But only a quarter have actually agreed to be there.
We've got sufficient. We had sufficient coverage with the. If we'd have all used 750 sites, that would have meant that each of those sites would be doing about 3 assessments per week. The coverage that we've got right now gives us the sites that we need. It means people are travelling less than 45 minutes in 40% of cases, based on our latest analysis. At the point in time we did not need of going live, we did not need 750 sites. It's about 40 of the people travelling. The analysis we've done so far, and we're doing some more, it's actually around 45% are travelling less than around 45 minutes. Then it's about another 20% are travelling less than 60 minutes.
Did you fill in the subcontractor declaration that DWP required of you?
I believe so, yes. You would have done.
Well, what do you mean you believe so? But if you'd had that declaration, each of your subcontractors would have had to sign up to say they were going to deliver the service. And I go back to it. Only a quarter of the NHS trusts have signed up. None of the 2 private providers, private hospitals that you mentioned in the tender document, they haven't signed up either, have they?
So it's not unusual that between the point when we're doing a tender, which was
it's usual to lie in a tender, is it, Ms. Coleman?
Absolutely not. No.
Well, let's go through. I mean, so how can you say you've got a contractual agreement when you haven't?
No, what we said is that what we had is...
You said you had a contractual agreement. You can't say something different today to what you said in your tender document.
I can defute it again if you'd like me to. That we did not lie in that tender document. We gave a view of exactly where we were at that point in time, and with the list of suppliers, and we've got the backing information that says we corresponded with all of those suppliers and they were happy for us to name them. Yes, you're right, we didn't take them all through to completion, we didn't need to. It's not unusual for that to change before we actually got a contract. We didn't contract for all 4 lots, we contracted for lot 1 and lot 3. We had the people in place that we needed when we started.
Seems to me you've been playing fast and loose with the truth here. But can I just come back to this point you were making about distance to attend? You said 45% people take up to 40 minutes. What percentage take more than an hour to get to one of your places?
So at the moment it's around, and I'm just using the stats that I've got now, we're doing some more analysis, but what we're
Answer
currently...
my question,
Yeah,
please.
no, I will. Currently we're seeing 40% less than 45, about another 20% 60, and then over an hour is the remainder, so around...
Say that again?
Slowly,
sorry,
please.
Yeah. It's 40,
and speak up.
40% is less than 45
Yeah, we got that.
minutes.
How many people take more than an hour?
It'll be about 40,
what percentage?
40% or about more than an hour.
40% more than... Now, again, in your contract, what did you commit to? Just tell the public what you committed to in the contract.
So what we talked about was what we thought we could achieve. We're
not
not
what did you commit
that.
to, Ms. Coleman? When you submit a tender, it's not just chatting about something. It's saying, this is the specification that I will deliver. That's what you're responsible for. We'll come to whether the DW... What did you commit to?
I've got to be honest, I would have to look at the document.
Well, I am looking at it, and it's surprising that you're not familiar with it, but what it says is that because PIP claimants have heightened mobility challenges, we have designed a solution which means that between 75% and 90% of claimants will be within 30 minutes travel of a local centre. That's what it says.
And that's absolutely right. We're not there yet. I'm not going to sit here and say we are. We're absolutely
Well, then why did you commit to something that you then failed to deliver?
Because what we used, we didn't have data around where those claimants were going to come in from at the point of putting the tender documents together.
You didn't say that again?
We didn't have the data of where these are new claimants. We don't know. What we were able to use... And what
come on. You've been in this field, don't tell me. You've been doing, this is ridiculous. You've been looking,
yes.
You've been examining, you've been assessing people for claimants since 2005. To sit there and say we didn't have any idea about what where they would be and what they would be. And
actually, you say in your tender document the large number of local centres that we have. I think "we" means your company in that sentence. The large number of local centres that we have means that approximately 90% of claimants will be less than 30 minutes travel from a convenient consultation centre, with the remaining 10% under 60 minutes. You couldn't have written that sentence unless you knew something about where your local centres were and how many of them you had.
You're right. What we did do, what we were able to do at the point of tender is we had the data, you're right, we've been doing disability living allowance for quite a number of years. We had the data about where the existing DLA population currently is. We reviewed that data and we made some assumptions based on using that population and looking at where we knew the centres were that were being provided by the people that we thought we could contract with. That's what we talked about at that point. What I've shared with you is what we're now seeing right now. That doesn't mean to say that we're happy with that. Of course we want to improve that further.
Can I just check something also about the quality of the assessment centres? These are assessment centres for people who have disabilities.
Yes, yes.
In Norwich, you have one that is not accessible for people who are disabled.
So I believe you're talking about the WCA centre in Norwich.
I'm talking about St Mary's House.
I think that's the centre that we use on the WCA contract. That's not the centre that we use on the
Well, there's a photograph of here of a lot of disabled people protesting outside it because they can't get into it. I've been corresponding with DWP for quite a long time about it, as have other Norfolk MPs, and the most recent response from DWP, which is dated end of February 2014, is that it would not be a cost-effective use of public funds to relocate the Norwich Medical Assessment Centre at this time. But what I'm interested in is, why would you choose a building to do disability assessments that was not disabled accessible?
So I think it's important that I do clarify that we don't use that centre on the PIP contract. That's a WCA centre.
Only?
That's only. We do not use any, we're not actually using any of the accommodation that we use for WCA. That's one of the things that we were able to build in for the design from day one on PIP. We were very clear that what we wanted to ensure is that any of the challenges that we had about disability access to some of the sites, some of those sites, Norwich, for example, is one that's been there for a number of years in advance of when ESA was introduced.
But when they're disabled people, you're telling them to go to Cambridge or Ipswich, which isn't a lot of help when you're disabled.
So again, I think you're talking about the WCA cases there. What we do on PIP is we were looking very much to do something very different and to look to send people to local sites that they were very familiar with. So an example that I can give you is I was listening to some contact centre calls just recently. There was a
You're going to have to speak up a little bit. Sorry.
I was listening to some contact centre calls recently and a lady was talking about, she was concerned she was going to go to Truro. We were able to say to her that she was able to go to her local site, was her local GP practice, which she recognised and she knew. That's what we've tried to do. I accept we're not there in terms of the travelling time yet. We do need to bring more centres on site, and that's what we're doing.
I'm going to move you on because we've got...
At the moment that 40% of your customers are travelling for more than an hour by public transport. And actually my experience in public transport and disabled people trying to use it is that just using one journey, let alone making an exchange, can be very challenging for people with intellectual impairments, with mobility difficulties and so on. So we're saying that nearly half of the people who are trying to get to your centres are taking over an hour on a journey being done by an able-bodied person, let's be honest, because a disabled person will usually take longer, will have to arrange things like access to platforms and all those things which, add to the time in it. How can you be satisfied with that?
And I don't think I've said I'm satisfied. What I've said is we want to improve that further. What we looked at was the 750 sites was based on full volumes under a true mandatory reassessment. We're not there yet. We need to improve that.
I'm going to read two of your quotes, just to get it on the record. One is, page 76, we have agreed with our partners that their accommodation will be available throughout the term and they have agreed to this requirement. That's not true. Each partner has contractually agreed to, I've read that one before, to provide accommodation. And I just want to quote you, because all this misleading in this contract led to ministers then misleading Parliament on false information you gave them. So Lord Freud, when he answered a parliamentary question to Lord Alton in the House of Lords, said on the 22nd of 7th, Atos have demonstrated through their supply chain contractual arrangements through their supply chain's contractual arrangements that they have full geographic coverage with an additional capacity of at least 15% in each of their supply chain partners, as well as backup options across the network should volumes prove higher than expected. That wasn't true in July, and it remains untrue today, doesn't it?
We do have we still have access to more sites than we actually are using right now with the supply chain. That what we're doing is that we do need the practitioners to go in them though. So what I don't want to do is open an empty site. That wouldn't add any value to anybody.
Well, why did you have a contractual arrangement if you did?
Because what that allows us to do is where we have got the capacity and we have got the people in that geography is actually use those sites. But what we need to be able to bring together is the claimant, the practitioner and the location. So we have the locations right now. The assessments are taking us a lot longer, so that means we're not able to optimise them because we haven't got as many practitioners as would leave.
I'm going to ask you one more set of questions, which is around the assessment. The assessment is taking a ridiculously long time. In my own constituency, I had 2 cases of terminally ill people with cancer, where, if I can find the papers, miraculously, literally last week, they finally got appointments for assessments. They've been waiting, I think, 6 or 7 months for them. I'll come back to them later on. But when you put forward your tender document, when you committed contractually with DWP, you said you had enough health professional staff, didn't you?
Yes. Based on what we understood the assessments...
Have you?
Right now, based on the assessment durations and the volume of assessments that are coming through to us that we can't deal with in advance of a face-to-face assessment, right now, no, we don't. That's one of the things that we're trying to improve. The assessments are taking twice as long as we expected. We didn't know that was going to happen.
So why...
And we're seeing 20% more people going through to face-to-face assessment than we expected or understood at the time of the tender as well.
So why did you put into your document again, in Lot 3, which is the one that lots of us are concerned about, in Lot 3, our solution reduces the recruitment effort to 63 direct health professional recruits. The balance of the capacity requirement, equaling to 840 health professionals, is sourced from an increased utilisation of our supply chain partners' resource pools, our supply chain partners' resource pool of HPs. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was true, actually, yes. So
well, if it were true, you wouldn't have to be recruiting now, would you?
So there's 2 things. One is, yes, we have to recruit because we have to we're doing a lot longer assessment, so that means we need more people to do audit.
Actually, to be honest, you can't say that either, Ms Coleman, with the greatest respect. If you look at the NAO report, the number of cases coming through the system is not greater than the number that was anticipated when this modelled. It's just not true.
But what they came, you're right, they're coming through at the same level, but they came through later than we expected, so we weren't able to get the HPs trained quick enough. They couldn't do enough cases to learn quick enough. And what we're now seeing is the actual assessment.
They came through later, but you still didn't have people trained quickly enough.
What we weren't able to do. So there's 3 factors really. One is the assessments themselves are taking twice as long as we expected. We expected them to take just over an hour. They're taking 2 hours. And there's 2 factors involved in that. One is the actual face-to-face part of the assessment themselves, and then is the making sure that we write the reports up to the right quality standard. The second part of that is we're seeing, of the cases that are coming through, we expected that around 25% of those would actually be dealt with at the front end of the process, so through a paper-based review. What we're actually seeing is that around 96-97% are having to go to face-to-face assessments, and that takes longer.
4 times as many people.
Actually, in effect, if you wanted to do it the other way around, it would mean the same thing. We need double the capacity we expected because everything's taking twice as long and there's more of them to do.
I was just wondering if that was because of the issue which was raised by our earlier witnesses about evidence from previous DLA assessments not being used in this process.
Evidence is certainly a contributing factor. One of the things that we saw when we did the controlled go live, and if I may, I would like to come back to the terminally ill piece because we are actually processing people under terminally ill cases and the special rule cases. We've ring-fenced people.
You're not.
So we're doing
my two cases, if I can find them among documents, are both terminally ill with cancer.
I'm happy to take those offline, but
don't take them offline, but don't make a statement to the committee that I know to be untrue from my constituency caseload.
We are processing 98% of cases for terminally ill within the 2-day requirement that we've got.
Well, hang on a minute. I'll take the 2 Barking and Dagenham cases. This is just a nonsense. It really makes me so cross because these are, this is my original point. These are really people in terrible, terrible need. One woman was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in June 2013. She's having chemotherapy, and she's also got a debilitating brain condition. She applied for PIP in August 2013, 7 months ago. Miraculously, last week, she gets a date for a medical assessment in Atos for the 28th of March. Another case is another woman with bowel cancer in April 2012, which has spread. She applied for PIP in September 2013, hasn't heard anything, and then miraculously last week, she is given a medical assessment appointment on the 1st of the 4th. That's a 7-month wait. So to sit there and to tell us in 98%, when this is just one constituency MP, I've got two examples, I've got other cases, but those are the two ones that should have been on your fast track system. To say that you're doing 98%, I just don't believe.
I will absolutely look into those cases. What I will
don't
say,
make these general statements if they're just obviously not true.
We are processing. They're not. I think we demonstrated this to the NAO when they came and had a look. We've been fully transparent. We are processing terminally ill cases, special rules, within 2 days. We have a ring-fenced team.
It's not true, Ms. Coleman.
How long have you been processing terminal ill cases for 2 days?
All the way through. We recognise. Yeah, you go back to the statistics. The statistics show it. I don't know those 2 cases. Like I say, I'm really willing to have a look and see whether or not they fell under special rules. Because I'd be very interested to see whether they did. But terminally ill cases, special rule cases, we are processing within 2 days. It's absolutely right that we've got backlogs on normal rules, but definitely not on special rules.
Can I just give you one final opportunity before I go to Mr. Devereux? Can you confirm or not whether you had got agreements in place at the time of submitting this tender document to the DWP? Did you or did you not have agreements in place, as you said you did in the tender document, with all the NHS trusts and the private hospitals to deliver services? Did you have contractual agreements in place?
We did not have signed contracts at that point, no. We couldn't because we didn't have a signed contract with the department. We had agreements in place about the scope of services that they would deliver, and we had agreements in place about what that would look like.
I would just say to you, Ms. Coleman,
we didn't need all
not
of them.
misleading the committee is very serious.
I'm not misleading the committee. We did not need all of them. When it came to contracting, a number of things changed between the point when we put the tender document and the point when we contracted.
You only, in the end, have got agreements with 4 out of the 16 NHS trusts that you claimed in this document you had agreements in place. You have not got an agreement with the 2 private health hospitals.
We don't use the 2
so
private
it's
hospitals.
Not to tell the committee you had agreements in place to deliver is not actually, and to say that what you said in this document was true is not actually correct.
One of the private health providers.
Is it correct?
It's correct that we had agreements in place at that point based on what we knew. We didn't have a contract. We couldn't sign contracts. We didn't have a contract. We didn't know what lots we were going to win.
I'm going to go to Mr. Devereux.
A case has been raised with me about somebody in Tynemouth undergoing cancer treatment. They made an application in January for you. You acknowledged receipt by the 15th of January, so that was good, and advised that a claim would be decided by February the 14th. But a month later, 18th of March, your parliamentary liaison team, because by then the local MP had taken this up, acknowledged that a home assessment has yet to be arranged and failed to deny that the constituent may have to wait until June 14 for a payment. Now, you've been telling us that you're trying to improve. Is that what improvement looks like?
No, I mean, I think none of us would agree that the delays that we've got right now are acceptable, far from. What we're now able to do, which we haven't been able to do until quite recently, is actually give claimants a much better view of how long those delays are going to be. What I have found, and that's where we were very uncomfortable, that we couldn't tell, we just didn't have the right information to tell them. We can now say to people and set their expectations. Now that's clearly unacceptable, but what we are able to do is give people an expectation of when we can see them. What we're also doing is building our capacity in parallel and taking a number of actions to make sure that we can deliver more face-to-face assessments.
Right, Mr. Devereux.